Okay, so we are now live. Welcome everybody to this Google Hangout with our CX experts. As we are in the new year, we are now joined by some new CX experts, and I'm very excited to be speaking with them and presenting their thoughts with you today. So the theme for today is experience design and innovation. And the subtopics that we're going to draw out today are approaches to design, how leadership plays a role, both as a CX leader and then the other leaders within your organization, and then considerations for mobile and social integration to design. So with that, I would like to have our experts introduce themselves and give us a little perspective on how they approach the design process. So Diane, would you go ahead and introduce yourself to the viewers?
Absolutely. Diane Majors with AT&T. I'm currently in the Mobility and Business-to-Business Solutions team and CX. We talk about experience design here at AT&T as being kind of everyone's job. One of the things we've really tried to do is embed mind shift, thought process, tools, techniques, and education so that anybody who's making a change to an experience understands their role in doing that. So we don't kind of leave design up to just the designers or the design team. So helping to kind of lead that effort and get that shift across the organization is where we've been focused, and I think our leaders are on board with that and understand the impact of it and have seen that as we've gone through redesigning interactions, service, products, mobile interactions. So it's been well received, and I think it's starting to take hold here.
Perfect. And then in addition to Diane, we have a second expert. Peter, would you introduce yourself and give us some perspective on your approach?
Yeah, well, good to be here with you guys today, with you, Drew, and also Diane, and for those listening. Just as background, eSource helps utilities really tackle customer experience from end-to-end perspective, and so I work with a lot of. You guys giving me feedback?
Yeah, there's a little bit of feedback there. That may be because your microphone is on too loud. So try that. Yeah, and
let me. Is this okay?
All right. Much better.
All right. So in general, here's what I think about the design process and how we approach it and how we teach. It's kind of starts with the customer intention, and also there's an element of innovation also. So sometimes a customer will, or when you really start to understand your customers and do ethnographic and market research, and you really have sort of that perspective on what their intentions are, the design process sort of starts with that and with personas and really getting into almost micro-targeting what the experience needs to be and how you can differentiate it based on the needs of the user and the intentions of whatever that user or that customer is going through in any certain moment in the experience. So first and foremost, the approach for me has always been starting with personas, starting with understanding the emotional needs and the tools that these customers use, also the sort of a day in their life, and really kind of walking that process through. What customers don't have is the big picture about what's available and what you could do above and beyond. And so there's things that can be created through innovation and the process around innovating that are clearly more than maybe what the customer may know they need, but something you can actually see that they can't. And you think about Henry Ford as an example, who, if he would have listened to his customers, right, he would have had maybe just horses with a better buggy. And so he clearly saw something bigger, and that applies, I think, in a lot of situations. We see it at companies today, really trying to be innovative. But it takes that internal big picture, and it takes the design process of really understanding your customers, and personas and journey mapping have always helped me, and the approach I take. So.
Yeah, so I think those are both from both of your perspectives. Diane, that being it's everybody's job in the organization to play a role and be their own leaders in the design process. and then Peter, you saying that as the designers, we have an expanded view of what we can offer to the customer, how we offer it to them, when we offer it to them. I know that Henry Ford quote, and you know Henry Ford's famous for saying, customers can have the car in any color they want, so long as it's black. Okay, so that's a funny one. And then Steve Jobs says, people don't know what they want until you show them. So there is certainly this trade-off between listening and then leading in your experience design. So those sort of frameworks and perspectives articulated, I would love to move into mobile and social and really the changing environment that our customers are having their experiences in. Peter, you had sent an article to me, and I'm going to post this to the event page for everybody to read. But it was perspectives on experience and design from a number of different folks across the board. And the one that stuck out to me was the creator of the Fitbit. And the Fitbit is the small watch you wear that tracks your health and your well-being. There you go. You've got one on now. And what he said in there was the simplicity of design. Limited features, less is more, was his approach and how he saw this new technology. And so perhaps we can start with just new technology and new interfaces more broadly before we move into mobile social. And what your perspectives are on, you know, mobile is not the last thing we're going to see as designers. Social is not the last thing we're going to see as designers. When new things come into the wheelhouse, how do you guys go about figuring out the right place to include them in the journey? Diane, can we start with you?
Sure. I think there's some great takeaways from that and the way that we approach really innovation. And I think you're talking more about social and mobile are some of those ways that customers really interact with brands today. And so we really try to helicopter up and think about using journey mapping and some of the things that Peter talked about what that customer is trying to accomplish and what's the easiest way for them to accomplish it, because they're trading off not only their emotions and what we're driving there, but they're trading their time, their stress, their effort for those things. So we really try to take that very human-centered approach when we're thinking about what customers are trying to get to, how they're interacting with the brand, and how we can achieve those goals in a more efficient and effective manner, which goes right back to your less is more concept and that true human-centered design. So absolutely agree with that. Peter?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think your example, Drew, on the Fitbit's a great one. And yeah, for those listening, if you get a chance to check out the Technology of Us, which is an ebook you can find on Teletech's actually website. I found it very interesting how forward-looking it was into what innovation is doing. And I think one of the things that we're seeing is the collapse and combination of technology and humans. And you know, there's a point where we're almost becoming one and the same. And I'm still getting feedback. I apologize. I hope this is. You're muted. You're muted, I think, Drew.
Oh, sorry. I'm muted, but when you're not speaking, Diane, if you would mute your mic, it might be Peter's voice coming through your computer feeding back.
Sure.
So let's just try that one more time.
All right. So yeah, I think for me that idea that machines, technology, and humans, as we evolve, we're continuing to see things come together. And you know, if you were to think back in the, if you were to show a picture of what people were doing and how they were shopping in the 50s versus what they're doing today, obviously it's dramatic. People walk through the mall with their phones like, you know, this, and they're constantly checking to understand if they've got the best deal or if they've got other opportunities to have a better experience. So for me, this idea that these things are combining is really, really important, and I think that we actually have to embrace it and follow what the customer is asking us to do as leaders in these companies. And I think what they're asking us to do is to create those experiences that are memorable when the brand is designing towards memorable experiences, or maybe effortless and easy when a brand is focusing on that. And so it actually can be two different sides of the same coin, but you really have to think about from the standpoint of mobile and social. The barriers to information are completely gone. It's all in everybody's fingertips, and so the competitive landscape is wide open for customers to understand and to see into your processes more than you may have even realized. And so, just embracing it is the first thing, the first step, and actually putting a plan around how you can have an experience that integrates mobile and social in those key moments. I think that's where you start. And I'm happy to go deeper on that and with some ideas, but I'll pass it back to you, Drew, for the next step. And I am going to try to get my mic cleaned up a bit so we don't have feedback. I really apologize to the audience here.
Hey, Drew, I think a great example of what Peter's talking about is, recently I had the opportunity to watch the person from Neiman Marcus and Nordstrom's, and listen to him talk about the magic mirror that they have, which kind of takes that whole shopping and dressing room experience to a whole new level where customers can actually try on something, and the magic mirror allows them to try it on in different colors without going and picking up another shirt outside or calling a salesperson, swiping their phone right there at the mirror and everything getting packaged up and sent to their home. I think it's that combination of technology, mobile, and social really enabling that customer to achieve what they're after. And so we really focused on the human element and what they're trying to accomplish and how we make that ease and effortlessness using that technology. So that's where people often confuse, hey, technology is a great thing and it's what it is. It's really just an enabler to that human experience. So I think they did a great job of kind of demonstrating how they married those two things. And that's really what we focus on here too. We know that people are busy, and they need the network, and they need the products that we offer in order to enable that, and we really focus on trying to get to that same human element that Peter was just talking about. So another great example, you can look up the case study, and I'll send it to you, Drew, so we can post it on the site.
Yeah, so I think that's a fantastic example of how you can use mobile as an element to the broader experience, not just me looking at my screen and thinking that's the mobile experience, but including that in your physical experience as well. We've got just a few minutes left, and what I wanted to do was remind the audience that you can submit a question to our experts by just typing it there into the YouTube page if you're watching on YouTube, or the Hangouts page if you're on Hangouts, or if you're on Twitter, you can tweet with the hashtag that's below on my line here, hashtag CXPA Hangouts. And while we're letting people consider their questions and post if they have any, I think the last question I'd like to ask you both, Diane and Peter, is, all of us are at different organizations with different customers, and we're planning for different experiences. How would you recommend we start the conversation or drive the conversation around designing mobile and social elements into our experience if the rest of the organization isn't willing or doesn't quite understand? What are some first steps we can take to leveraging this growing space where experiences are happening and we really can't avoid?
I'll start off on this one, and I'll also ask the audience maybe a more direct question to see if we can get some things going here. I would like to see if anybody can share with us something they've received via text or social from a company that surprised them, whether it was during a transaction or well after. And I'll give my example after I answer your question, Drew. The buy-in for going after mobile and social, integration into experiences is going to have roadblocks. There's going to be resource questions, for example. Well, if we're going to open up these channels, how do we resource them? And so there's case studies available on exactly sort of how you can do that. Actually, there's teams that have deployed sort of globally an expert or a social media type manager in different locations, so you got the round-the-clock sort of view of how things are going in the social space. I think one of the things that leadership, the challenge for leaders is to understand that there is an ROI behind this, and I'll talk about how you can establish that. And the other thing is, I often find that the legal team at a lot of organizations struggles with this because of how open that conversation can be and how public it can be. And so you have to be able to address both sides, and you have to really tackle both the sort of the protection concerns around customers and around your own company. Really starting with legal, I think the idea to get past a few hurdles is to pilot something small. Take a small segment of your customers or a small segment of where your interactions are and really try to hone in the experience for those folks. And meanwhile, you can actually show that, you know, while you're tracking customer feedback and while you're tracking either upgrades and purchases or loyalty, there's always going to be a couple key metrics you're going to look at. And I think those metrics will shine through as you start to enable those channels. But I wouldn't enable them, you know, without the plan. I think the plan has to be there. The pilot is usually a big key way to get things started and to start, you know, just a handful of folks in the organization. And then finding those early adopters that are in the organization that are, you know, sort of usually millennials or whatever, but you've got this segment of people that are in your company already that are they're going to give you use cases and stories around how this is going to work, and they should be bubbled up. But it all starts with you know, a lot of the management teams are going to ask about, you know, the ROI and why we should invest. So I guess I would hope that as a leader of customer experience, or if you're thinking about doing this, you would go after a pilot and you would talk with the legal team, and I think is one of the key stopping points on that journey. So I'll pass it over to Diane. Hopefully some of you guys can give us some questions along the way.
Yeah, I think it's important to continue. You know, thinking about if you're just getting started, especially, is to really think about how mobile and social are a portion of what they, you know, this big omni-channel, which is essentially just all the channels that you have and how you touch the customer, how well you execute on that. So I would caution, it's great to go down that path of being social and mobile, trying to kind of catch up, you know, and kind of be out in front of it. But to Peter's point, it's absolutely right to make sure that you still have that consistency, that regardless of where they touch you in the organization, that looks the same, smells the same, acts the same, so that you're being both proactive and reactive with that customer regardless of what channel they're in. So a caution to kind of not let that kind of stand in the way and let the rest of your channels fall down. So just lessons learned as you kind of move forward. And I agree with you. I think that integration of all of the teams working together, the back structure, policies, security, all of your feedback, and knowing where customers, as we kind of call it, the creepiness factor of you're watching everything I'm doing, you're giving me proactive notifications, right, which is all great, but listening to their voice and really talking about how we're enabling them or how they're feeling about where they're getting contacted. So that's a big topic of discussion for a lot of companies now, with just how far we kind of push that integration and making it easier for them without kind of scaring them about their digital footprint and their security and personal.
Yeah, that question just came through. The question is, you know, all of the formats that are arriving, not just mobile social, but things like wearable technologies, and how do you, one, as they come up, integrate, and I think you've given great examples with pilot, make sure you've got all your teams aligned and not just go for it nilly-willy, but look for resourcing, etc. But more broadly, you know, and you use the word omni-channel, Diane, but as new formats continue to emerge, are there any tips or any pieces of advice we can have as professionals to not feel overwhelmed by the fact that it's never ending? Is it never ending? Is there a silver bullet? What would you respond to the question of how do we keep up with the formats?
Well, this is this is a tough one. I mean, you're going to see things coming out that are, especially in the wearable space, that we wouldn't expect. You know, I think the example of Fitbit is a great one. You know, it's gotten a lot of traction. There's actually strong competition against it now. And I think what they did right was they really focused on simplicity and sort of how you know, it's just another extension of the channel. And if you're ever a customer, you'll notice that, you know, you don't look at your Fitbit very often. You look at your app, and so that's really just an extension of another channel. And what, you know, Google Glass did was interesting as well, but it's not aesthetically normal to have half your, you know, eye covered. And I think just remaining focused on how we can still be human with these wearables is probably the most key component. If you feel like you can integrate digital digital information channels into wearables, then you've got to have sort of your table stakes being that it doesn't impact the ability to just be a normal human, and to have normal interactions, so you can meet both of those needs. So I think the other advances that are coming in wearables, you know, the sky's the limit. There's going to be a lot of formats. I think it doesn't really change the problem statement, which is, you know, integrating the value of that, whatever it might be, however it might look, so that the customer can have it with ease and feel like they're still very human, with the added value of all that digital information. So that's my quick take on that question. I know, you know, having, you know, sort of the outlook of things merging together with digital and wearables being probably one of the next big waves. I think the medical device industry is going to get further and further along. Whatever Apple does in the next, you know, March-ish release around their watch, you know, I'm sure there's going to be some surprises for us all there. So I think we have to just keep on top of the market and remember to integrate all those key sort of foundational things. So I'll pass it over to Diane.
Yeah, I think we always kind of start in our process, just as you talked about, Peter, with really the human heart hasn't changed. We start with the human and what they're trying to do and what memories they're looking to make and what connection they want to have with not only themselves and understanding, like Fitbit, some of the things that are happening with them, but how they interact socially. And so keeping that in the forefront as we go through understanding, design, development, testing, and launch even, to get that feedback, it's really important for us to hear that voice and understand, you know, did we hit the mark? Is it overwhelming? You know, where do we kind of hit that? So I always go back to that. It's something we have, you know, a mantra, and really trying to design around that human element. So as you said, Peter, at the beginning, that's where you start and that's where you continue in the end. So regardless of what technology comes through, you always kind of go back to what are they trying to accomplish, what are their needs, and stated wants and unstated wants, and how can we best meet those, and be on the forefront of being proactive, even in making their life. Sometimes as CX professionals to try to orchestrate around all the new things and innovation, but one step at a time, we enable people to think differently about the customer and really are purposeful, I think intentional and deliberate about the designs that we put in place.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think this has been a fantastic conversation. I personally was quite intrigued by the wearables conversation. I wasn't expecting to talk about formats that are still emerging. You know, I'm still struggling with directions and frameworks for applying mobile and social, which are basically 10 years behind us, 25 years behind us. So I think the takeaway for me, and everyone's going to have their own, but to not lose sight of the human element and to the experience we're delivering to our customers currently. You know, you don't want to trade off just to apply some new format because it sounds cool and the media says that there's a lot of value there. it doesn't enhance your customer's existing value, don't integrate it. Take your time with it. Try to understand it. And don't forget that, and I love the way you said this, Diane, that the human heart hasn't changed. And I think that's just brilliant. So we took it about 15 minutes over, which means we had a great conversation. What we're going to do now is post this recording to the community where we can comment on it and share it and do anything you would in a social environment. Diane and Peter are available as experts. If you have follow-up questions, you can email them from cxpa.org. You can also email all the experts if you have a question. They're here for you. That's part of your value as a member. So beyond that, I want to thank Diane and Peter for joining and providing their expertise. I want to thank everybody on the other end of the video screen for joining and watching. Thank you for the questions, and I hope to see everybody, sorry about that, mobile. I hope to see everybody on a future CX Experts Hangout at the very last Wednesday of next month. So are there any closing thoughts you guys want to say, Diane and Peter?
I'll say this. First of all, just again, thanks for having us on today, and I appreciate the question today. I think we should keep striving for more questions in these calls. And this was a great conversation. I think we've got the innovation ramp is just starting. It's going to get so fast. So I'm excited about that. And I actually want to congratulate Diane. I'm an AT&T customer. I've been for years, and the experience has dramatically improved over the last 3 years. I really have noticed it. So
Thanks.
whatever you're doing is working.
Well, it's not just me. Like I said, it belongs to everybody, and that's really the way we try to approach it, so that every single interaction, people are thinking through that human heart. So thanks so much. And to the audience, yes, absolutely. Love to answer questions. Peter and I are available. Would love to hear your questions and your thoughts, because we're learning as well. This journey never ends for any of us.
Okay, thank you all very much. We'll see you at the next Hangout.